Good evening. By now, you've probably figured out what our topic is tonight, a life of challenge. This is the 6th of 13 lessons that we're taking in the 13 C's of, that says successful Christian living in the original outline, but that's too many words to fit on the title of PowerPoint, so I deleted one. All right, let's get back. Several. Challenge. Every living thing faces challenges to its own survival. In the plant and animal kingdom, somebody is trying to eat you, or you are trying to eat somebody. And somebody, you're not trying to cooperate with your predator, and your prey isn't trying to cooperate with you. So that's a challenge. So it should not be surprising that Christians face a variety of challenges, in addition to the ones that we already face as human beings. So you're a human being, there are challenges that come with that. You're a Christian, you have the human challenges, and there's another set of challenges that are going to come with that as well. One of the nice things about the Christian challenges is that we don't walk those alone. So that's kind of an important point to keep in mind. In our series so far, we've looked at 5 traits that are important to successful Christian living: commitment, the choice to do something in the future based on a pledge, agreement, or a relationship. Oftentimes there's an emotional reason involved in this. I'm doing this because I care about someone or something, so I'm going to stick with this thing. Confidence is the belief that we can rely on someone or something. And we need to have confidence in God, Christ. We need to have confidence in each other, and we need to have a certain degree of confidence in ourselves. We don't want to go overboard with self-confidence, but we do need to have that in order to be able to function. Continuance or persistence is the ability to continue firmly in a course of action despite difficulty or opposition. That happens. There are times when, you want to do A, but before you do A, you have to do B, but before you do B, you have to do C, but before you do C, you have to do D. So why are you even going to start? Because it needs to get done. No one survives without persistence, so this trait pairs nicely with challenge, because challenges are the sorts of things that get in the way of where you are and where you want to be. Contentment is the ability to be satisfied with what one already has or with one's current condition. Mentioned this before, and I want to emphasize it again. Contentment is not a lack of ambition. It's not sitting around and feeling good about yourself while everybody else is taking care of us. We are going to participate in taking care of ourselves and in taking care of others, or being indifferent to the conditions around us. So if you're in pain, that's going to be a little bit difficult to be content about, isn't it? But it should motivate you to action to get back to that particular point. And then last week we looked at character. Character is the set of traits that makes us distinctive. The working definition I gave you last week is character is who we are when no one else is around. So the things that we won't do in public because other people will see us and recognize that maybe you're not the sterling human being that you're portraying yourself to be, we don't do those. Do you do them in private? That's your character. The kind of character that we want to develop is described as either a godly character or a Christ-like character. It's the same character in both cases. It's just in relation to what? In relation to God, it's taking after God the Father. In the Christ-like, it's following after the example of Christ. So you're going to wind up with the same characteristics in both cases, just how they relate. Now, before we get into the next PowerPoint, I want to take a little break here, and I want to tell you a story. This is a short story, and when I tell it, you're going to think, wow, that's a really lousy story. And you're going to be right. Okay, are you ready? Once upon a time, they all lived happily ever after. The end. Nobody is going to read that story. Nobody is going to buy that story. There are certain essential elements of the story, of stories in general, that are missing. It's got no characters. It's got no setting. There's no time or place or mention of a location or anything like that where this is taking place. There are no actions or events that drive the narrative there. Good stories have all of these things in it. But I could go back and reword that, and so give you some character names and a place and an event that happens, and it's still a lousy story. It just has more words in it. What's it missing? Conflict. Conflict is key. Obstacles, that thing that gets in the way, the thing that the protagonist wants but they can't have because of the antagonist and all the obstacles and stuff like that, it's missing the challenge. That's essential in good storytelling. So there has to be some reason for people to want to do something in a story and something that's in the way and prohibiting it. Now, why do we like that in stories?
It reflects real life.
Bingo, right there. That's the answer right there. It reflects real life. Nobody's life has ever been once upon a time I lived happily ever after. If you've done that, you've either missed the boat or you've led a charmed existence that nobody else on the planet's ever had. There always challenges, always obstacles, always something in the way. And so that's what we're going to look at, is these things that sometimes we choose to engage in. So here's some definitions of it. I have a bunch of them up there, but there's only two of them up here that really matter, and the one that's highlighted: a task or situation that tests someone's ability, or a contest or a competition, especially a duel. There was a time in this country that people fought duels over, name calling or reputation or something like that, or an attempt to win a contest or a championship in sport. Reality TV today is based on the challenge. And the king of all the reality TV shows, Survivor, has challenges. They are reward challenges and they are immunity challenges. And the goal in both cases is to win it so that you don't get booted off the island ultimately. But the one that really matters to us is a task or a situation that tests someone's abilities. Oops, hit the wrong, right there, okay. One other interesting one that I did kind of find about in medicine, when they're developing a vaccine and they, have some people that are trying it out on, one of the things that they do is a challenge that goes in and says, how do they react now when we expose them to the thing that we vaccinated them against? So if the vaccine's good, they hang up. If the vaccine doesn't work, they all get sick. So the value of challenges. Challenges come in two basic types of challenge. There are challenges that we choose, and we do this all the time in a lot of different ways. Some of them are fairly insignificant. Some of them are, challenges that we choose that are intentionally life-changing in some particular way. And then there are the challenges that choose us. Which of those is more fun? The ones we choose are the ones that we really like, because that's us making plans about the future or enhancing ourselves in some way, and we feel like we're more in control of those. The ones that choose us, that's kind of up in the air. That could be something very, life-threatening even, or something that threatens a relationship or career or some other thing that you thought was going really terrific, and now this thing happened, and what am I going to do about it? They happen, they're going to happen, and sometimes they teach us the best lessons in there. There are varying degrees of difficulty associated with both kinds of challenges. If you want to run a marathon, 26.2 miles, you're going to train a lot. And you first of all have to get a certain level of initial conditioning, and you're going to train probably 9 months to get the endurance to do a marathon, 26.2 miles. And a lot of people who do it the first time, they don't make it, but they stick with it and make it the second time. If you're going to think about running a marathon, that's really easy. I mean, I can do that right now. That was edifying. I'm really glad I'd met that challenge, That wasn't anything really significant associated with that, was there? But there are various degrees of difficulty associated with challenging. Some of the major challenges that we choose to make are get an education of some kind. We go to high school, hopefully graduate, go to college, go to trade school, enlist in the military and learn job skills. We try to do something to enrich our minds so that we'll be able to make a better living and take care of our families and things like that. Choosing a spouse. Everybody's gone through this exercise in here, most of us have, of choosing a spouse, finding somebody suitable, somebody you like. In some cases, some people went for people who were just pretty enough for what have you and things like that. I was more of a character guy, but I never said no to a good-looking woman, so, I married one. But you do choose it based upon some, these types of criteria. But, the challenges that don't come, that we don't choose, they're important too. But we learn valuable lessons from the challenges that we face, lessons that we cannot learn any other way. You go back to that story example. In the story, your main character or characters are going to be, if it's a good story, they are going to be forced to make a choice of some kind that's going to reflect their real values, which isn't necessarily what they say, what they think about themselves. And they're going to face the challenge and meet it, and they're going to grow from it in some way. So somewhere between the start and the end of this thing, they are going to be transformed by the challenges there. If they are not transformed, then it's tragedy. And those stories, they have their place too. So it is going to do that to us because that's the way that it works in real life, and we can't learn these lessons any other way. And again, the challenges we don't choose, just as impactful, maybe more impactful, because you have to deal with a whole different set of circumstances there that you didn't have time to set up or prepare for. So the challenge, yes?
Back to your definition, it talked about abilities.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about abilities, I think about physical, but I think you need to include the mental or emotional along with that.
Yeah, I was thinking those when I wrote that. Yeah. Yeah, in fact, those are actually the ones that, physical endurance can be built up. The mental endurance, emotional endurance also has to be built up in a lot of the same ways in order to be able to do a tough challenge. So the challenge of following Christ. Is following Christ really a challenge? Well, the short answer is the Bible says so. Somebody turn to 1 Corinthians 9, 24 through 27, and let's read it. Who's got it? Go ahead, Rick.
Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win. Everyone who competes in the games exercises self-control in all things. They then do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. Therefore I run in such a way as not without aim. I box in such a way as not beating the air, but I discipline my body and make it a slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified.
So, how many people run the race? Lots of them. How many win the prize? One. He's modeling this passage here on the ancient Greek Olympic Games, which is the model for our modern Olympic Games. The reward at that particular time was an olive wreath around your head. That was called a Stephanos, a crown, a victory crown. That's what you got for winning the games. And one of the things you're impressed about here is a lot of people are competing, but who's going to win? Only one, but what's the strategy behind their victory? What are they doing? What are they investing in this process to win this? Well, the self-control. They're doing the preparation and the work necessary to do this. Olympic athletes in modern times do the same thing. You have to be dedicated to your craft as a swimmer or a runner or a pole vaulter or a volleyball player or what have you in order to be able to compete in the games, and you have to be the best of the best to win. So, and again, it's an imperishable type of a thing that, well, we're competing for imperishable, but it is a perishable type thing. You get the gold medal, you don't get to take it with you, even if they throw it in your casket when you're gone. But it's important to do that. I was watching a television show several years ago. It was a documentary on a man who had a very successful college football career, and he chose not to play in the NFL, and instead he was fostering children on a ranch down in Alabama, very successful. I don't remember his name, but in the show he said that when he was in college, one of his coaches told him, "You're good enough to play in the NFL." He says, "But I'm going to give you a piece of advice." He says, "Don't play professional football unless you want to marry the game." unless you are going to be so dedicated to it that that consumes your time, your life, your relationships. And he thought about that, and that's why he chose to go this other route. So he's not going to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know, I'm not going to rack up millions of dollars on, big contracts or anything like that. But I would argue he was more successful because of the choice that he made in fostering his children and the lives that he touched as a result. But that's the type of dedication that it takes. And Paul's talking about that's the type of dedication it takes to be a Christian. This has to be the focus. Now, big difference is we all get the crown in this one. Everybody gets it, but that's the model for it. And another passage, Luke chapter 14, verses 25 through 35, you're all familiar with this. This is the counting the cost package or passage. So you're going to build a tower, you got to lay down, figure out what the cost is. Can you afford it? Going to go to war with the king, you got to figure out if you're going to be able to, win victory if they've got twice as many soldiers as you do. Even coming before Christ, you need to count the cost here. You're going to have to give up some things in order to do this. So are you willing to pay that? I think one of the weirder things I saw many years ago, there was a restaurant that they were building on Hamilton Road around Easton, and had a sign up there talking about, I don't remember what it was called or what the cuisine was, but I was really excited about the opening of this restaurant. It had just the stuff I like to eat and all this kind of thing like that. And the day came for the opening, and they didn't open. And what happened? Well, found out a little bit later, they ran out of money before they built the restaurant, but they didn't have enough money to open it. So the building sat there for a while, something else moved in, and I think eventually they tore it down. Didn't count the cost correctly, did they? But I also think there's another cost that we need to count, and that's the cost of not doing it. You're going to pay a price one way or the other, and you're going to get something for the price you pay. Are you willing to not be a Christian and pay that price? It's almost easy to say yes because of the environment that we're in right now, but you don't mean it. Nobody means that. So that's another cost to think about in this, in facing this life of challenge. So, and rooting around in some scriptures and looking at some things, I came across this passage in Matthew 7, 13 through 14. It's in the Sermon on the Mount. You're all familiar with it. He says, "Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction. And there are many who go in by it, because narrow or small in the New American Standard Bible is the gate, and difficult or narrow in the NASB is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it." So the gate's there. One of the paths is broad, very easy to find, very easy to go down, but it doesn't end where you want it to be. The other gate, it says in the New King James Version, is narrow and difficult, and I think the ESV is very similar in here. New American Standard says small and narrow. The old King James Version said straight and narrow, and that kind of captures the idea of what he's talking about here really well too. Second passage to look at is Luke chapter 13, verses 23 through 24. "And someone said to him, 'Lord, are there just a few who are being saved?' And he said to them, 'Strive to enter by the narrow door, and for many, I tell you, will seek to enter and will not be able to.'" So, quick word study. In Matthew chapter 7, verse 14, narrow comes from a Greek word that means to groan. And it's used figuratively in this situation because it runs counter to our inclinations. I mean, let's face it, we don't like being uncomfortable. We don't like being overburdened or feeling like we're carrying too much of a load or having to struggle with anything, but that comes with the territory of being a human being. And if we can get out of it, we're going to try to, but here's one where, if this is the path you want to take, this is the price you got to pay. Difficult comes from a Greek word that means to suffer affliction or to be troubled. Now, both of those Greek words have multiple definitions, so that's why you see some variation amongst the translations there. But this difficult, this suffering, affliction, or being troubled can come from circumstances, or it can come from other people, or it can even be self-inflicted, depending upon what we're wrestling with. The word strive, I mentioned out here. The word strive comes from a Greek word that could be transliterated as agonize. Literally, if you take the Greek letters and stick English letters in there, it comes out agonized. It reads agonized there. And it means to contend or to contend with an adversary. So back in storytelling, the hero or the heroine of your story is called the protagonist. That's Greek that means for, striving for. Your villain is the antagonist. That's Greek meaning striving against. So the protagonist has the goal that they want to achieve here, and the antagonist is trying to stop them. And a little tip in writing a story is you want to write your antagonist in such a way that they believe the story you're telling is about them. They believe that they're the hero in this narrative even when they're really not. That's good writing right there. That's where it comes from this word here, to strive for or to strive against. The purpose of challenges. Challenges have goals or rewards. Challenges require an investment of resources. To overcome the challenge, you will pay something for this thing. You will invest time, you will invest energy, you might invest money, you might invest physical activity or a long-term work, but it's going to require an investment of resources. Going to a trade school might take you a year. Doing an apprenticeship for a plumber or electrician, that can take you several years to do, but you're willing to pay for it because of the goal of the rewards. And the challenges we choose to accept must be worthy of that investment. If it's not, you're making a very bad bargain. So, if you're going to a trade school, like a culinary school or something like that, because the cooks on TV all make a lot of money and stuff like that, but you don't really care about cooking, there's a misalignment there. That's probably not a good investment of your time and your resources. Find something else. The challenges that choose us usually don't care whether we think they are worthy or not. At that particular point, it's not about is this a worthy goal to achieve or to fight to have. It's I got to deal with this particular thing. Spiritual challenges will always have a purpose. None of this stuff is going to happen just in random there. Now, it may look that way for a while until you understand what's really going on, but there will be a purpose behind a spiritual challenge. Is there any questions or comments? Yes.
When you say spiritual challenge, are you meaning maybe like a crisis of faith, or challenges that arise like Paul had from telling people about Jesus?
Yes.
Everything?
Yeah. Does that challenge you? I mean.
Well, we kind of talked about this Sunday in our small group, and I'm sorry, this is going to take.
No, that's fine. We got time.
I brought up I feel like you do something and you're doing it, you're thinking, man, this is too easy. Like I almost feel guilty, like where we live and what we have to deal with, because there's not really any consequences to us sharing the good news like other people in other regions of the world. So it makes me think, am I not doing enough because I don't really have any consequences?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I would say don't count on it always being that way, though.
Yeah.
I mean, historically, Christianity through 2,000 years of history has been both in favor and out of favor. Sometimes at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay. You have a comment? I thought you raised your hand.
Me?
Yeah. No.
Oh, no.
All right. Any others? Yeah, I'm not going to characterize everything. Sometimes, and my challenge may be your easy avenue, and yours might be mine or something like that. So in some sense, it's kind of relative, but whatever it is that we're going to have to face as a challenge, it's there for a purpose. There's a lot of different types of purposes that we have in our spiritual challenges. I can identify 4 for you real easy, but I only felt like we're going to have time to discuss 2 of them. But refinement, development, education, and inspiration, I would say. There's some lesson that we need to learn, from a challenge, or we need some refinement or development or what have you. And so we're going to look at these 2 right here. In Job chapter 23, verses 8 through 10, Job says, "Behold, I go forward, but he is not there." So he's talking about God. and backward, but I cannot perceive him. When he acts on the left, I cannot behold him. He turns on the right, I cannot see him. But he knows the way I take. When he has tried me, I shall come forth as gold. So Job is talking about God moving what we might say mysterious ways. I don't fully understand where he is or where he's at or what he's doing. But in verse 10, he knows the way I take, and when he has tried me, not if, when he has tried me, I shall come forth as gold. Why gold? The process that he's talking about here is refinement. Gold is what's known amongst chemists as a noble metal, and that means it resists reacting chemically with other compounds. So if you've ever watched a gold rush show or a mining show or something like that, you will see when they go out and find gold, they're sifting through a lot of dirt or panning or something like that, and you always see these little gold flecks or these nuggets or something like that in whatever they're using to catch the gold. That's gold right there. It's not bound up in other chemical elements in the soil or anything like that. Now, silver and copper are both very reactive, and so you kind of have to work with them a little bit differently. But that's gold right there. But it's only mostly gold. When gold is mined, these nuggets typically contain other metals. Three that are very common are silver, copper, and lead. Now, if you want the gold to be pure or high purity, what do you got to get rid of? Yeah, these other things, the silver, the copper, the lead, or anything else that's in there. And so refining is the process of removing these other metals from the gold. It involves a lot of heat. Basically, you're going to melt all of this metal down because the melting temperature of these elements is different. So silver probably melts a little earlier than gold. Copper probably melts a little bit earlier than gold. Lead, I'm not sure, I've never liked refined gold or anything like that. But as these other impurities melt, you can get them out of there or get the gold out away from the impurities. And then when you get out of this thing, you've got this relatively pure gold nugget. And why do we want that? It's worth more money. Gold historically has been used for decoration, jewelry, and things like that because it doesn't tarnish. That's why it's valuable in that capacity. As an engineering metal, it's even way more valuable than that. Your computers, your phones, there's some gold in there at some key places on the circuit boards because it does not tarnish. Get it wet, it's not going to fail. And so, there are people who actually try to go out and find old computers that people are throwing away and try to go in there and get the gold out of them again so that they can make a little bit of a profit off of it. It's that valuable. Still involves a lot of heat. So that's what you're trying, that's what the refining process is. It makes us more valuable. It makes us more pure. So think about that, my little golden nuggets. Then there's this passage out of James. Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials. Okay, that's like, if you're not a Christian, that's like one of the maybe 7 dumbest things anybody ever said. Consider it all a joy, trials, words don't go together. Knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its perfect result, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. So we're going to be in trials, we're supposed to count it as a joy. What is it going to produce? What are the trials going to produce? Endurance first, and then endurance is going to produce perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. So, yeah, I do want to go to the. So, being joyful during a trial seems counterintuitive. If I was a doctor and I was, about to do a very difficult surgery on a patient, and the patient would say, I'm really excited about this surgery. I've been really looking forward to this because I hear that this is a lot of fun. I might think you might need to see another kind of doctor first, because, maybe a psychiatrist or something like that, because this is not going to be fun. Your expectation is way off here. Grace in its Greek word means that which causes delight. Joy is the response to grace. That's the delight that we feel. But implicit is an awareness of grace. So why do you account it joy when you have this? You are aware of the grace that's being given to you. Exercise, trials produce endurance. Exercise is important for everyone. We all should be doing a little bit more of it maybe than we are, but walking or doing something like that. Physical exercise is important for everyone. Spiritual exercise is important for everyone. If we are not serving, we should be finding a way that we can serve. And that will grow over time. It's like anything else, abilities that we don't develop, we never have. Abilities that we do not use, we lose over time. They atrophy. Just the way it is here. Today's trials may be unpleasant or painful, but they produce the endurance that in turn produces the maturity that we're after. See, this is the way we grow up. And in fact, that's kind of the way we grow up physically, isn't it? You got to go to school. You got to learn these skills. You got to eat right. You got to get a little playtime in and get off the screens and do all of these other types of things. But it's a multi-year process to produce an adult human being. And if we don't do the types of things that develop the endurances that we need in mind, thought, spirit, and what have you, we come out flawed. We're going to come out a little bit flawed anyway because we're human beings, but maybe even a little bit worse because of these other things that we weren't doing or exercising or developing. So that's a good thing. Endurance is the thing that fuels persistence. You can persist until you run out of energy, till you run out of the ability to endure. And at that particular point, you're not going any further. And you might think, well, I'm strong-willed. I can force my way through this thing like this. The road is paved with people who died thinking that. Life is paved with that. You know your limitation, accept it, but endurance will help us get through it. Okay, any questions or comments?
I think a good thing to consider with the idea of challenges always having a purpose is that we aren't always going to be able to see that purpose, especially not when we're in it. And then even sometimes after, it's still hard to see what the purpose is. If we consider the example of Job, when he asks God, why have I endured this trial? The answer he gets is, who are you to ask?
Yeah. He doesn't actually get the reason why this happened. He gets that answer. That is correct. But he also got, the other things. He was, blessings were restored and what have you. And he did learn his lesson. I mean, that was a key point of that narrative as well. So he endured his challenges. So, what is life or story without challenges? It doesn't sell. Your story won't sell without the challenges. Your life isn't going to happen without the challenges. This is going to come with the territory. Sometimes we seek challenges and we work to meet them. Sometimes the challenges find us and we are forced to deal with them. In my life, that when the challenges have found me, that I wasn't really expecting them, that has taught me some of the most valuable of lessons that I've had to learn there. I learned a better sense of compassion, because by having to lay in the hospital bed for several days while my gallbladder was trying to kill me, or at least it felt like it, and then I can relate, this really hurts, and maybe I ought to be a little bit more sensitive to people when they're in that type of a condition. I learned professional skills because I was forced to fix a challenge or deal with a problem along work that I didn't want to have to deal with. Some of them were really aggravating, but you learn from these things, and so there's good that comes out of these things. So understand that challenges have a purpose, and then finally, focus on the prize. Christ talks about the prize a lot. There is a reward that is coming. Focus on that. This challenge that's the here and the now right now is the thing we got to get through to get to the prize. You lose sight of track of the prize. If you lose sight of the prize, then the challenge can appear a whole lot bigger and a whole lot tougher than it would if you kept the prize in mind. So, any closing thoughts or anything? Well, appreciate your attention. We'll see you all next week.